Welcome, everybody, to The Selfish Lovers. This is our premiere. On this show, we're going to cover objectivist ideas, but from a perspective that maybe sometimes you're not used to following or finding. We talk a lot about, economics from the objectivist perspective and politics from the objectivist perspective. What are the benefits of having free market economics, the benefits of a limited government, of empowered citizens. But have you ever asked a question on how important it is to have emotional intelligence, individuals that really have the tools to create healthy relationships instead of toxic ones? What is the relationship between having individuals that can understand the importance of empowerment, of good connections with others, whether it be their friends, their family, or their loved ones, with also having a healthy society where individuals feel free and responsible even for the emotions that they feel. And because of this, from the previous shows that we used to make with the Ayn Rand Center UK, Nikos and I, well, decided to host this new show called The Selfish Lovers. Our goal in this new show is that we will talk about subjects that are related to human relationships, things that you and I and Nikos have been involved with in our current or past relationships, things that also are challenges for these new generations, how social media affects how we relate to each other. Is monogamy the way to go, or are new alternatives coming in the way? And to start this first show, we decided to do it with the topic sleeping with the enemy. So, welcome everybody, and thank you for being through the platform of YouTube. You can also send your questions in Super Chat. Nikos, it's a pleasure to be with you here in this show. How are you?
Thank you, Gloria. I'm doing very well. I'm looking forward to this show. So let's make something clear from the beginning. We're not here to pass the objectivist line on romance, if there is such a thing.
Right.
We're both students of objectivism, but the point is this: philosophy makes sense only if you live it in life. And that's what is cool with objectivism. It's a philosophy about life. It's not like many religions or other philosophies, which is either the religion or your life. You have to choose the one or the other. The cool thing with being a student of objectivism is you can see the use of that philosophy in on your life. So people who want to ask questions, you can ask them in the chat on YouTube. If you want to also ask a super chat, then it's going to go on top, and we're definitely going to see it. So, and also it's a way to help the work of Ayn Rand Center UK. So let's start with today's topic. So here's the situation. It has always been difficult in a way, having a relationship with someone you disagree with. And it's not something new. I remember my mother always telling me, so my parents broke up at some point, but she told me, before we broke up for personal reasons, I almost divorced your father in 1989. And what was 1989? A very scandalous year for Greek politics. It was like an earthquake in Greek politics. And my mother was in the Communist Party. My father was a socialist. So even within not different poles, the tension was so high that you could see it even in couples. But there's something special today, because today we live in the times where supposedly the personal is political and the political is the personal. So we had many weird stories coming up after 2016. So for example, we had lawyers in the United States saying that we have many customers who came in for a divorce. And when you ask them what was the main reason, they said the election of Donald Trump. Or in the UK, also you had personal and romantic relationships breaking up because of Brexit. And another thing is you spend 5 minutes in dating apps, and you see all the time people saying things like, if you're a Brexiteer or if you're a Tory or, I don't know, maybe a Trump voter, slide left. So basically, no. So basically, if we don't agree in politics, you are rejected. And this became more personal to me a couple of years ago. So I get a message from a friend who tells me about two people we know. And they were a couple for years. And what happened is they were out for dinner with a big group. They were, imagine, middle class, like academic type of people. So they bring up Jordan Peterson and they start bashing Jordan Peterson. And poor guy says, you know what, people, Jordan Peterson is not that bad. And he starts a huge fight with his girlfriend, which escalated to the relationship going downhill. And I think they broke up. And what his girlfriend told him was the usual line, I don't even recognize you anymore. So the situation seems to be particularly weird and difficult. And the first question is this: is there anything healthy in that? Because you could say, why be with someone where you disagree so fundamentally in big things? So that's why I find the topic interesting. So back to you for a first comment.
It's so good that you started with a family story, because with my parents actually it was the same. They separated when I was 16 years old, but they were always fighting, except on one thing, and that was politics. And I think that one of the things that draw them together at first was their love for animals, because they both share love for dogs and cats, but also that they both come from backgrounds of anti-communist people who ran from Cuba and Hungary. So in that case, even couples that don't have other things in common, but if they have politics as a ground, then maybe they can start a relationship. And I always thought about that, like all the things that they couldn't agree on, but that was one thing that actually united them. And I remember, like, if there will be US elections or Guatemalan elections, they will both be on the same side. And at least I was like, okay, in this they agree. And now it's completely the opposite. It's like, you see, as you were saying, in the dating apps, or people that are super polarized in one political figure. And I think in that sense, it is sad, because I think there's a difference to, let's say, you have a family history of Holocaust survivors. So of course, dating a neo-Nazi, it's not a be in place. Or if your family was a victim of the dictatorship of Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, okay, yeah, maybe you're not gonna date a girl that benefited from all the oil that was robbed and nationalized in Venezuela, because there is like a direct harm made to your life by some regime. And I think that that's one thing, and it can be understandable and respectable. But another thing is the polarization for the polarization per se, the fact that there are huge amounts of people who are not even questioning why they defend what they defend, and they just go behind the slogan, and they don't even know, when they are asked a question, what is it that you stand for, or what is it that you stand against. The most recent example in Latin America, it's been Chile. So in Chile, they overthrow the constitution of the dictator Pinochet, which actually was a free market dictatorship, right? And people are super happy with the fact that the constitution was abolished. But when you ask them, so what's the new constitution gonna say? What is it that you stand for? They have no idea. So it's not the same to put in Tinder, oh, if you're a Trump supporter, don't bother, don't give me like. Or if you are a Brexiteer, don't bother, don't give me like. That's one thing. But another thing is that you have very clear what are your principles, what are your values, and why exactly is that you are against Brexit or against Trump or against the constitution of Pinochet. And I think that what is happening is that a lot of people are missing the opportunity on really getting to know someone that can be completely the opposite of them in this one particular subject, but that if they would sit down and they talk about their principles, like the things that they cherish and value, maybe they will find that they have more things in common once they take the label out of the equation.
Right. Yeah, so I'll make a comment which might really cost me in street credibility with other objectives, but I'm just thinking out loud. Could we say that, let's say there is a young idealistic leftist, and that person is a leftist for the wrong reasons, but there is this flame inside that person. This person takes things seriously, takes life seriously, and wants to discover things. So for example, that person see there is injustice there. They cannot really understand that this is not capitalism. They cannot understand real economics, but they want to make something of life, and they want to take life seriously. So they think the best solution is joining the left. For the people who are familiar with the novels of Ayn Rand, think about Andrei Taganov in We the Living, the idealistic communist who later decides that he was wrong. And the heroine, Kira, has some attraction for that person. Why? Because the values that this person has, although mistaken, they are correct in one way. Right. That he takes things seriously. He wants to change the world for the better, and he's doing a big mistake, but because he's that kind of person, he understands that mistake. So the question is this: would we rather be, for example, with someone who is from a different political world, but they are passionate about life, passionate about politics? So, for example, last year I had a debate with a very famous leftist, and she was a girl, and in the green room we had some good atmosphere, some good games, because I recognized the person who is interested about ideas. Whereas quite often you might be in a waiting room, in a green room with someone who is a conservative or a libertarian or whatever, and you realize that there's nothing there with that person. So what is the level though? What is the limit? After what point do you say, you know what, this difference is too big? So is it, for example, someone being a Marxist, someone being a leftist but not a Marxist, someone being an identity politics, Hillary, Black Lives Matter, environmentalist, but just because that's supposed to be the group thing? So is there a point, is there a line in the sand where you say, you know what, beyond that point, that's too much, we can't have anything?
Right, I agree with you, and I think that line, that beyond that point, you will only encounter with really informed people, which is what is lacking in nowadays politics. Because to really find a well-informed Marxist, that is very rare. It is easier to find people that say, oh yeah, of course, private property is immoral. But if you start going in a Socratic method with them and start asking them why, until the moment that you point to their shoes and say, so would it be cool if I just rob your shoes or I take your phone because you don't believe in private property? Almost everybody's going to be like, no. If it's about my phone and my shoes and my house, then of course private property should be, respected. And if it's about my job, of course, the best salary should always be the one paid. It is really hard to find people that are ideologically committed to whatever principles there are. I think that's why libertarians and objectivists who are ideologically committed to the ideas of private property, the pursuit of happiness, individualism, if you start from a starting point where you are the one ideologically committed, then you can be more tolerable, because you understand that the rest of the people are, as you were describing with the character of We the Living, people who have good intentions, but they're just not well informed. And when you really inform them and you explain to them, and they sit down and have the time to talk to you, and really try to understand where is that you get your informed opinions from, then you can get consensus. I would get more consensus with someone like you described, and I have actually between my friends that are left-wingers, they are burners, they hate Donald Trump, they are concerned about Black Lives Matter, even friends who are Cuban, making documentaries about what it means to be a Black Cuban in the United States versus a white Cuban in the United States, and things like that. I find myself having more things in common with those than people that are blindly defending Donald Trump, or that are blindly defending Joe Biden or Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez with no real substance whatsoever. That's why I wrote the books of how to talk to a progressive, how to talk to a conservative, because you mostly, if you are ideologically committed in these ideas, probably you will be the more tolerant one in your relationship. And also that comes with a downside, that you always will be the teacher regarding politics, and that can be tiresome as well, right? Because you're also not supposed to be the indoctrinator or the philosophy teacher of your partner, right? It is also supposed that your partner has also some talents or some things that nurture your life. And if you know more about economics and politics, it should be just one ingredient, right? There is one super good quote of a radio broadcaster from Mexico, Marta de Baile. She was doing a show about the success of relationships, and she brought in this psychologist, and she said, when sex is good in a relationship, like when there's sexual chemistry and everything goes well in that department, sex only constitutes the 10% of that relationship. The rest is the 90%. Now, when the sex is bad in a relationship, when things are, there's no chemistry in bed, and it's like that, sex constitutes 90% of the relationship, and the other 10% is whatever else. So what they're trying to say with this quote is, yes, first there has to be attraction, there has to be that initial chemistry. If that chemistry works, then of course you're going to engage in sharing principles and values with the person that you are attracted with. Now, if attraction and chemistry doesn't work, man, you might have the same objectivist ideas, you might love the same books, you might share the same vision of the world, but if there is no chemistry and attraction, you are destined to be good friends, but there's not going to be a development of a romantic relationship. So the question in place is, how hard are you willing to work once you have the attraction and the chemistry and you value that, in order to have a partner that might think different from you in certain aspects? And what are the non-negotiables for you? For example, for me, a non-negotiable is I cannot date guys that are religious. And I don't care what religious they might be from, because eventually, if you want to form a family or something, the conversation is going to be like, so are we going to baptize the kids? Are we going to go to service every Sunday? Are you going to teach them to be, I don't know, praying to a certain God or a different one? So religion for me is part of the things that I say, I'm sorry, I can't. If there is attraction with a person that is religious and he's also willing to meet me halfway, okay, maybe we can work it out. So I think that you can have your non-negotiables, but once you sit down with the person, if they are also willing to meet you halfway, then you can work it out. The problem with people that are already saying to you, if you're a Trump supporter, or if you're a Biden supporter, or if you're this or you're that, don't swipe me right, it's that they're missing on the chance of sitting down and having great conversations. And in this sense, you are depriving yourself from having diversity in your life. And then everybody around you is going to be people that are like yes men and think the same. So what kind of relationship can you build with someone that is not giving you anything new or anything challenging?
Okay, so we're gonna get to the objectivist view of all this, because it's gonna add one more layer of complexity. But before we get there,
right,
a comment on what you said. So here's my theory, and that's completely me. That's obviously not objectivist or the other one said. Most of the cases when you hear a couple going wrong because of politics, I think there's already something very weird there. And here's why. So my experience is that when a girl is really into me, she will vote the party that I'm voting. She's going to support the team that I support. I've had times in my life where I wake up and I have text messages back in the day before social media with transfer news about my team from a girlfriend, because she was so into my world that she bought into everything. Now, the very same girls, when the enthusiasm is over, or when through my mistakes they were not so enthusiastic about me, suddenly these cute things, oh, he's so passionate about politics, or he supports his team, suddenly the cool things become, oh, well, get a life. That's very weird. You're so dogmatic. You should open your horizons to different things. So here's how I see it. When someone is, so maybe a good scenario would be the following one. You meet someone who is more or less neutral about politics, let's say, but they do appreciate your sense of life, that you take these things seriously, that you have values. To use a phrase I hate, and I'm going to use it in a different meaning, that it's something which is beyond yourself. That's what Peterson says. You have to live for something bigger than yourself, which I don't see it like that. This is myself at its purest when I'm into politics and all that stuff. But you get the point. So, and then because there is this attraction, you invite that person into your world, and that person at the same time invites you in their world. I had cases where I was very excited with a girl who was teaching literature. And I got excited about the things that she were teaching, types of literature, that books I would never otherwise read. But I see a person who I like. I see a person who is so passionate about what she's doing. And therefore, I'm also magnetized to like the things that she likes. Or back in the day, in the past, I've had, for example, girls that were dancing, tango or other things. And it was the first time in my life that I considered, well, dancing is maybe cool. But again, that reflects how the other person sees you. When this is gone, so when suddenly the fact that you like Jordan Peterson, like this couple friends, means that the girl says you're not the one, that I don't recognize you anymore, means that there's a big problem already there, that the other person doesn't want to enter your world, that you have disappointed that person. You were not the one you thought you were. By the way, probably that's for another topic, but the most usual thing that I've heard from people who either break up with me or me breaking up with someone else, like the most usual thing you hear, you're not the one I thought you were. So when you hear this with politics, it's almost never the politics itself. It's the whole package that suddenly is a disappointment, and the politics is maybe, at least most of the times, is, let's say, the tip of the iceberg. Because let's be clear, how deep did that person know Jordan Peterson to be such an important reason to suddenly not like her boyfriend anymore? Anyway.
Exactly. And that is an excellent point that you're making, Nikos. How well do you know the object of your hatred? How well do you know Jordan Peterson, Donald Trump, whatever it is, even Nazism or communism? Like, for example, in the case of my parents, they knew a lot of communism, both of them, because, it was like real life proof for both of them. So if you really do know well your enemy, in this case, not your couple, but what you portray as your enemy, because it's not your ideology, or it comes from a different place, from what your passion or your principles are, I will have respect for that person. Like I told you at the beginning, I would have more respect for a true Marxist that can actually side me the communist and the Gotha like Orc after he was 30, and some input on Marx's biography that I had no idea of. Like, if I can recognize passion about someone, or about something that is different from my own passions, I can respect that. But people that are not passionate about anything, or that are just opposing things for no reason whatsoever, because they don't even know well what is it that they hate from the other side, then it's quite hard. And regarding what you were saying about getting the complaint of you are not who I thought you were, recently, from the guy that I'm kind of dating, I got the phrase, I love that you are the age that you are, that you're already in your 30s, because if I would have met you at your 20s with this like ideas, I would just think that you are not for real, that there's something fake about you. And I was like, really? So now that means that because I'm in my 30s and I fight for these ideas and I'm passionate about them, I have more credibility than if I were young or younger with these ideas, and people could perceive it as, you're not the person that you're trying to present yourself as you are. Even though I've been, like familiar with the ideas of liberty since I started in college, and trying to communicate them through radio almost 10 years from now. But yeah, there's also a sense of um, the importance that people have for understanding who you are, or having an idea of who you are. And about this, I read on an article about a movie that they didn't say what movie it was, but it said something really important, and I think we have talked about it in previous shows before. And it's that the image that someone has of you is unique and completely different from the image that another person has of you. So the image of Nikos that your mom has of you, or one ex-girlfriend, your best friend, a teacher that you have, is a complete and unique image, tailored by the things that person knows about you, the experiences that person grabbed about you. And if you turn to be a public figure that is doing shows like we are, then the image that all the people that are watching this can also perceive from you. So yeah, it is quite hard because you don't control those images. You have no capacity into saying to that person, no, actually, this thing that you think of me is not like that. That's why there are people who appreciate reciprocity, and they appreciate congruence, even if that congruence means that you are passionate about things that I have no idea of. For example, I don't know, as you were saying, your girlfriend who would like to dance tango, or maybe you start dating someone that is into parachuting and you've never done that in your life, or who plays the violin or whatever it is. But if there is passion and there's congruency about following certain activities, I think that you can hit a common ground with someone like that.
We're going to talk about the idea of visibility when we talk about love and objectives, because what you said, someone recognizing something in you, is very important. But still, since we're halfway, let's see what happens in the comments. So William, who you're only going to believe this if you know how cool a guy he is, he says he even debated his own girlfriend on a public event about the polarizing topic of feminism. So yeah, that's difficult to kind of top. So someone else asks how to finish your relationship and forget your partner if she doesn't share the same values as you. I would say that's probably easier. Looking in the past on girls that I had a huge crush on now, and since then I've changed, probably today it would never work. So, and hi to Charlie. And okay, so let's I don't see any other questions. By the way, if you ask a super chat, it pops up, so it's definitely the case that we're gonna see. So let's talk a bit now about objectivism and love, because objectivism adds one more important element. So objectivism has a very unique definition of love, which is not so much about chemistry. Although, by the way, I have to say, chemistry is big. Like, there has been cases in the past that there's this almost, you can smell something in someone and it does something in your head and you don't really know what it is. And then you find it somewhere else and it kind of hits in the center. So there is definitely this element, which is something that it's not totally, we can't totally explain it, but what we're going to say, but bear with me. So for objectivists particularly, what is love? Love is a response to values. So love is, in a way, you have an identity, you have a character, you have ideas, you act on these ideas, and then when you see this package of values to someone else, it's almost as if you're seeing a mirror. You see these values in someone else, but also this someone else likes you because of these values. I always remember how fascinated I was with this line in Atlas Shrugged. I'm going to paraphrase and probably butcher it, but Dagny says something to Hank Rearden. By the way, quasi spoiler, but anyway, it's relatively early in the book. And they have this discussion, and Hank says, so are you telling me that when you realized that I had a crush on you, your estimation of me rose? And she says yes. Like, that's very cool. So usually what happens is someone says, oh, I like you, and you feel flattered, which is the case. But if you understand this as seeing the value in someone else and someone else seeing the value in you, it has the peculiar effect that someone tells you, I like you, and suddenly the other person rises in estimation, because if you have self-esteem, you say, well, that person sees what a cool person I am, therefore this is cool. Now tell it to someone in high street and they're going to say, you're paranoid, you're narcissistic, that's completely crazy. Actually, it's not. I mean, what would be the opposite? Not having self-esteem and someone liking you, and you being like, I have no idea why this person likes me. By the way, I have been this guy in the past, and it sucks. Because even if someone who is, let's say, above your league likes you for whatever reason, instead of this raising your self-esteem, because the self-esteem is not there to begin with, you get hooked to the other person. And when they leave, when you were here, now suddenly you're here. You're way below. So the basis for something good to start is that you have self-esteem and you like yourself. Because otherwise, someone else liking you, it doesn't mean something healthy and special. So this is the unique, let's say, perspective of objectivism on love. What is the effect now on the topic that we're discussing? The effect would be that, according to this point of view, it would be impossible to have a relationship with someone who consciously holds completely different values. And maybe there would be something there, attraction, physical attraction on a superficial level. By the way, that's another interesting discussion. Could you have physical attraction without and nothing below that? That's maybe for a future discussion. So yeah, that's the unique, let's say, perspective of objectivism on the topic.
Yeah, what you're saying draws a lot of layers, because first, yeah, maybe you can have attraction for someone regardless of their values, but that's gonna end in a one night stand. We're talking about like how to build a relationship, because in Spanish we say relato mata carita, and that means like your verbal capacities are way upper than just having a nice face. Like you can get tired of a nice face after a couple of hours, or like a good physical attraction. But for establishing a relationship, that it has to be something more. Now, it is very important when you talk about self-esteem and the principle of mirror, because regardless of what happens in any relationship, the two persons involved do become a mirror of one another. And in a lot of relationships that I'm been with, I've tried to inspire the men that I've dated and that I have established relationships into, like, be the best version of yourself, but not being pushy or just saying it, but just like leading by example, like the kind of life that I'm living and doing like different things. And it turns out that the mirror is so heavy that sometimes the best thing to do is just to split up, because in order for you to not be a discomfort in the eyes of someone that has low self-esteem, you would have to lower down the way that you live your life. You would have to do less activities, be less ambitious, work in less places, not have friends all over the place, or what they call be a free soul, right? And at the same time, you also have to learn, and I think this has been a defect from people with higher self-esteem, that you think that just by example or by inspiration, you can inspire your partner or your significant other into, appreciate life in the way that you do. And it doesn't work that way. It's a job that starts inside of every one of us. And yes, there is completely congruence in what you're saying about finding out that someone likes you, and that immediately raises the bar on how you think of that person, because it means that they are seeing you for you, who you truly are. But this can also play a trick in your mind. a very good friend of mine from Spain, wonderful woman, and I talk about that. We talk about it when we did the show on the different advices that this American girl was giving to the guys if they
The
wanted a
Tommy
serious
Lawrence show,
relationship.
which I
That
think was the
yes,
most popular episode of the Daily Objective.
yes. So when we did that show, I sent that to a lot of friends of mine. One of them from Spain, like brilliant woman, a lot into libertarian and objectivist ideas, an academic professor, and still with that background, she has had a rough time with relationships, alcoholism, in regards of the partner that she's been with, abuses of some point. So sometimes there is this false idea that strong people with strong self-esteems never get involved in bad relationships, and that they always have the perfect partner, that the principle of visibility is quite correct. And it turns out not to be the case, because also people that are very smart and very intuitive, because they live their life with consciousness. And when you live your life with consciousness, it is very difficult to do harm to others. Harm, I think, is the consequence of you going in the world with no conscience whatsoever. And then is when like you can be very unconsiderate of others. So because you are a conscious human being, because you are into the potential of individuality, the importance of self-esteem, the importance of, having these rooted values, sometimes you find people intuitively that you're attracted to, and you can recognize their potential and you can fall in love with their potential. But unfortunately, there's a reality that you cannot subtract from the equation. So the therapist of my friend said to her, listen, that guy that you saw, that smart, considerate, gentleman, fun, super intelligent, very eloquent individual does exist. But between you and him, there's a drug addict that you cannot take out of the equation. So in order to have that guy that you see as a principle of visibility, you have to understand that the drug addict that lives inside of that man is also part of the combo. So no, you're not crazy. It's not that you invented the value that that person might have. That is a potential, but it's not a reality. And I've seen that sometimes people get attached into circumstances where they are trying to rescue someone, and trying to level up to that person in a level of where they are. And this can happen even with super smart, objectivist or libertarian or whatever people, because I've seen it. It's not like you are immune to that. And Neil Strauss has a very good insight on this. And it's because sometimes when you have, traumas from childhood and you have overcome it and you have been resilient, you unconsciously want others to also be resilient about their own things. And you think that with your own light, you can, help others shine. And it doesn't work that way. So eventually, when you become a mirror of the potentiality of what you could become, some people decide, it is too much, and they leave the situation.
I was smiling while you were saying all that because I have experienced this. So the biggest one huge mistake in past relations for me was trying to micromanage the other person. So I'm anyway a control freak. So when I see this potential, this control freakiness reaches the highest level, because it's like, look, you're good material. So I'm gonna, what's the term, what you're doing with this art form? I'm gonna
Yeah, like mold.
Yes, the way exactly I want, which meant that basically the relationship was like a boot camp. Morning we go out for workout, then you do 5-hour work in your dissertation, then we eat the healthy meal, then in the summer you read Atlas Shrugged as homework. As you realize, the girl was not happy at all with all that, and this had a double toll in the relationship. I was pissed off because he was not following the process. She was pissed off because it's like, you know what? I don't want to have a 6-pack. I'm not super excited with Atlas Shrugged, which was kind of a deal breaker, but that's another discussion. And I don't want a second father. So you have to be careful not to see things in another person that are not there, because then it becomes paternalistic and it's bad. Though, then again, the question is, what do you do then? Let's say you take the person as it is, or you go. I think probably the best thing is to go. But then again, if you like the person, that's a problem, because how do you know up to what point it can be changed? So, for example, in the case of your friend, what if she would persuade that person indeed to give up the bad things that he was doing?
Yeah, and if you succeed on that, you bet that it's not because you asked for it, but because the person convinced himself or herself that this is better. A friend of mine told me, because I've also dated guys that are addicted, but I've never been all the time. That's the thing when you're traveling, right? And you're moving from place to place. You don't get to be on the bad parts of someone. You just got to be for, like a Friday party, and you're not seeing the whole, a thing going around them. And when you want to, develop more feelings and establish like a relationship, you start realizing that that person has other priorities higher than the feelings they have for you, and then therefore you cannot make a project like an Aristotelian project together. You can dream in the Platonic world of, like the endless dating and having fun, like if you were kids. When it comes to like, okay, where is this going? And I had a friend who accurately say, well, yeah, these are guys that are married to the party, and you are someone that is married to your work. So if you're committed to your work and you are, dating people that are married to the party, in some sense, it works perfectly because it offers you an escape, and it offers them the excuse of, hey, I might not be that bad. Like I'm dating Gloria Alvarez and she's doing something for the world, even if I'm not. So perfect equilibrium, except it's not because you're not building a relationship that can actually move forward and be pragmatic. And I was like, yeah, I never thought about that. Like, I have no problem with someone being married to something else, because in some sense, yes, I'm married to my work. Does that mean I'm a workaholic? No. And I even like when someone has an attraction for me, regardless of who I am and what I do, because I
Wait, you said
appreciate.
that you like or you don't like when someone has an attraction
I
irrespective?
I like when someone has an attraction to me, regardless of the work that I have. It, like saying that the one thing that they admire about me is not my work, but like me as a person. Because most of the friends that I have, who are real friendships from way before, I started being a public figure, what they value about me is, yes, the principles and values that I defend in politics, but most of all, the principles and values that I live my life by. So it's not
Right.
just a job of defending political ideas. It's actually the way I live my life. And in fact, this is what has caused a lot of problems with people that don't understand my line of work. Conservatives, for example, they're like, wait, you first started like attacking communism in Cuba and the dictatorship in Venezuela, but now you look like a Marxist because you're up for legalizing drugs and gays getting married. And then the left wing is like, I don't get you. You say that you are for indigenous people to live their lives as they want, but at the same time, you defend capitalism. So if someone would like me for the job that I do, and not for the person that I am, it is easily you will find all these incongruences, which for me are not, because it's as we started this show, is lack of information and is lack of knowledge of what these ideas are really about. But for the world out there, it's like, no, there's only two dichotomies. You are conservative Republican or you are a socialist Democrat. And so I wouldn't like someone just, appreciating me for the line of work that I do, but as the person. Because that's the thing also that happens, I think, when you when people think that you're only your job. No, you're also a human being, and you have, once the stage and the conferences and the books and everything that you do are over, some people think that you want to keep the battle going. Like, I have had guys that when they meet me, they're like, you're so sweet, you are so easygoing, like, like, you're so chill, but when we see you, like, doing your job, you look so tough. And I'm like, yeah, I'm very tough with the ideas. That doesn't mean that I want to be in constant battle, especially with someone that I love, and there are people who expect you to be fighting all the time, and it's like, no, that's not the purpose of it all.
That leads us to the final part, because we're running out of time, which is a counterintuitive question, which is wish what you think, careful what you wish for. So the final part of the discussion will be, is it at the end of the day a very good idea if you end up with someone who is exactly like you? But before we get there, a couple of interesting comments. So someone says it's interesting to be known by the other person. And it's what you said about congruence. And in the objectivist literature, I encourage people to check out a book by Ellen Kenner and Dr. Ed Locke, who were a guest to the Ayn Rand Center meetup some weeks ago. And they have the notion of visibility, which is that the other person sees in you what you are. So people who are interested in this idea, I encourage them to check. Someone, then later, we see the comment, it's very exhausting when your partner is a project. I agree. Don't try to micromanage them. Having said that, yep. Am I going to try to micromanage probably every other relationship from now till eternity? The answer is probably yes, but that's another discussion. So here's the final point, though. Did you ever have the experience of dating someone who is basically your mirror? So in my Marxist days, usually I would date people who were more towards the center. On my objectivist days, the days haven't been that long, so it's mostly, but definitely never an objectivist. The one time that I had a relationship with someone who was basically my clone, we were reading the same things, we were passionate about the same things. We were literally plotting the revolution and how we're going to bring down the bourgeoisie. As a relationship, it was, I love that person a lot. She's a friend. But as a relationship, it was bad. It didn't work as a relationship at all. So, and the reason is that the tension was always, there was always tension. Of course, that was not the only problem. But so what that girl would say is the following, that when I go back home, I want to breathe out. I want a normal life. I want to deal with things that are, quote, boring. Sit down, watch TV, rather than argue all the time. Because one thing you need to know about Marxists is that they do argue all the time. Again, I don't know how it is between objectivists. I've never dated an objectivist, so I don't know how it is. Or maybe it was me. But could it be that it's a bit exhausting? So could it be that maybe the best case scenario is find someone who shares your values, but don't find literally your mirror, because then it's going to be a bit tiring, a bit exhausting. So you, Gloria, for example, would you be able to have as your boyfriend, let's say, the leader of the freedom movement in the country, who is all the time on the road, passionate speeches, that he thinks about, let's say, the free market revolution even at his sleep.
Yeah. Well, actually, I had the experiment of how that would look like when we were touring with the Chilean economist Axel Kaiser, and we were presenting our book together all over Latin America, and we were like the Hunger Games, you know, like the main couple in the Hunger Games, like you know, they fighting together were the best, and Pita and the name of the girl I don't remember. And even the newspapers were like, oh my God, you would make the perfect couple, both of you with the same ideas, he from Chile, you from Guatemala. And you know, like they tried to like mold us into this couple, but no, because there was no physical attraction, there was not that initial chemistry. Yes, their values are there, and it was very fun to work together for the same ideas, and we are super good friends, but it never developed into something romantic. Would I mind dating someone like that? Not necessarily. As long as there's that attraction, there's that passion, that where you can, you know, say, okay, I'm really in love with this person. It's not about convenience, or only because we think the same then we have to be together. I think that there are a lot of people who force themselves also into, you know, only being with libertarians because that's how they think, or only being with people that are environmentalists because if not. No, I think it's about, you know, I wouldn't mind dating someone who is a doctor, an architect, as long as they, you know, they wouldn't say, oh, I'm okay with the hospital that I work being nationalized, or the building that I built being, you know, expropriated. You know, it's like, if you find someone that has pride of the job that they are engaged with, um, and they live their lives by principles, and they are reciprocal toward you. And by reciprocity, I mean, if you are willing to sit down and listen to another person's point of view and the way that they live their world and how they view the world, and if you're willing to really, you know, understand where that person comes from with empathy, with respect, the reciprocal thing to do is that that person does the same with you. And if you can sit down and start sharing both of the views of the world that you both have, then you can get to an agreement. Either that relationship can work or it can't. But if we come from a point where we're not even willing to sit down with each other to get to know each other, because we're in the swiping culture where everything is replaceable and there's always someone better and better and better, then we never go deep into really getting to know someone. And again, there's nothing wrong with one night stands, there's nothing wrong with you know, having fun, but we're talking here about sleeping with the enemy in forming a relationship, right? So I think that without reciprocity there cannot be visibility, because the only way that two people can really get to know each other is with that. And on that note, I really highly recommend, if you're dating someone or you're curious about how much do you know your partner, there's a super interesting article of the New York Magazine called 36 Questions to Fall in Love with Someone. So the premise is that if you sit down and ask these 36 questions to someone else, and of course you have to also reply them, you will, quote unquote, fall in love with this person. I don't know if it would go all the way to love, but at least I think it's a nice experiment to sit down and see what is the human thing in the other person, and stop, you know, uh, avoiding stereotypes and putting labels on people without actually getting to know them.
Right. We could have a whole show only based on the comments because some of them are very interesting, but we're running out of time. So I'll say one last thing. So what is the one thing that has been constant for me on important occasions with important people in terms of the feelings I have for them? Whether I was a Marxist, or whether I was on my transition from Marxism to objectivism, or whether an objectivist, the feeling when you fall in love is the same when it's healthy, and it's one characteristic. you want to become better. You don't want to become better necessarily for the other person, although that's the surface level. But that, I think, is the healthiest thing. Even from that person I mentioned, who Razi threatens that he's going to bring her on the show. Even if the relationship did not go well, I learned so many things, and in a way, completely changed my life. It was my transition, actually, from Marxism to whatever came after. So that's the key thing, I think. Do you feel that this other person makes you rise? Does this other person command you, so to speak, to become better, but not command you in a bootcamp way that morning we wake up and we go run, because otherwise I'm very disappointed with you. So that's my final thoughts. So Gloria, I'll let you have the parting words for today's topic.
Thank you, Nikos. Completely agree with you. I think it's all about reciprocity. And yes, that was an advice given to me by one of my best friends at Burning Man. She's like, listen, I only have one rule. Are you willing to work on yourself? That's it. If the answer to that question is yes, and to work in order to be a better human being, a happier human being, then I can, bet on that person to build a life. Why? Because working on yourself means that you will have the time in order to really question the premises, the cultural biases, the obstacles, the difficulties that in your life has happened, for you to really have the tools and the will to be more resilient, more wise, more compassionate, and walk in this life with more consciousness. If that's the starting point, I think that the relationship has a lot of potential to succeed and to grow. If two people are really willing to work on themselves and really be reciprocal with each other, and getting to know that part. And by the way, that means also being vulnerable. And you have to stop thinking of vulnerability as something that is weakness. It's actually a strength, because there's nothing more courageous than sitting down with someone and saying, this is who I am, with the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is where I come from. This is what I believe. What about you? I think that takes a lot of courage, especially in this day and age. So that will be my final comments. And thank you, Nikos. I had a lot of fun in our first episode of The Selfish Lovers. And thank you, everybody, for sending your comments and being here.
That was good fun. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ayn Rand Center, for organizing this. Have a good night.
Bye.